Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're stepping back to a very specific moment in time, April 1912. We're going to dive into a story that has absolutely captivated and honestly haunted the public imagination for over a century. You know the name, the Titanic. But today, we're not just looking at the ship itself. We're going to look really closely at the night the so-called unsinkable ship actually sank. And you know, this isn't just some story about nature being unforgiving. It's a profoundly cinematic narrative about a perfect storm. It's about overconfidence, warnings that were completely overlooked, and some really critical engineering limitations that took an incredible human achievement and turned it into a devastating tragedy.
Just think about that phrase for a second, called unsinkable. That carries some serious weight, right? Even before this massive vessel touched the freezing waters of the Atlantic, it was burdened with this, frankly, impossible reputation. The White Star Line didn't just build the Titanic to dominate transatlantic travel in terms of luxury. They wanted to completely revolutionize engineering. I mean, the ship featured a double bottom and these 16 supposedly watertight compartments. The press and the public were literally told that even if 4 of these compartments completely flooded, the ship would still stay afloat. So it wasn't just pitched as remarkably modern, it was sold as invincible. And, as we'll see, that unwavering confidence in the structural design really set the stage for everything that followed.
Section 1. The Unsinkable Legend.
So, a maiden voyage. By definition, that's the very first journey made by a craft or ship in its intended duty. Historically, it's supposed to be a grand celebration, a triumphant debut. And for the Titanic, this was a massive global spectacle. The ship was carrying this fascinating microcosm of Edwardian society. You had the world's absolute wealthiest elite in first class, all the way to third-class immigrants desperately seeking a brand new life in America. There was astronomical excitement surrounding this brand new vessel stepping out into the world. People didn't just believe it would safely cross the ocean. They genuinely felt privileged to be part of an event that symbolized humanity finally conquering the elements. Nature was tamed. Or so they thought.
Which brings us to Section 2, a tragic maiden voyage.
The contrast here is just staggering. You have this towering myth of an unsinkable legend on one side, and the stark, sudden reality of a disaster on the other. And remember, this tragedy didn't strike some aging, worn-out vessel. It happened right at the peak of the ship's momentum. It's April 14th. The crew had actually received numerous specific wireless warnings from other ships about ice fields in their path. Let that sink in. They knew ice was out there. But driven by the intense pressure of the maiden voyage and that supreme confidence in the ship's design we talked about, the Titanic just kept steaming ahead, near top speed, through a pitch-black, remarkably calm ocean. That lethal combination of speed and darkness meant that by the time the iceberg was actually spotted, disaster was completely unavoidable.
Okay, let's break down the actual mechanics of the disaster, because it all unfolded incredibly rapidly in the dark. A lot of people think the ship crashed head-on, but actually, scratch that. It didn't. It grazed the iceberg along its starboard side. The sheer pressure popped the iron rivets and buckled the hull plates. And suddenly, not 4, but 5 crucial forward compartments were completely exposed to the freezing sea. Now here is the fatal engineering limitation. The bulkheads separating those supposedly watertight compartments, they didn't reach all the way up to the uppermost decks. So as the heavy flooded bow dipped down, the water simply spilled over the top of one bulkhead right into the next. It's kind of like water spilling over on an ice cube tray. And to compound this massive structural failure, there was a devastating human decision. The Titanic only carried enough lifeboats for about half of the people on board. That severe shortage turned what should have been an urgent evacuation into an absolute desperate nightmare.
Moving on to Section 3, Shocking the World. The tragic night that shocked the world. It really truly was. After agonizing hours of waiting in the freezing dark, the RMS Carpathia finally arrived at dawn. They managed to rescue 705 survivors, but that left over 1,500 souls lost to the Atlantic. The global community was completely caught off guard. When the news finally hit land, it wasn't just treated as a standard maritime accident. It was a profound psychological shock. Massive investigations were launched almost immediately in both the US and the UK. The sheer disbelief that something deemed invincible could simply vanish, it literally shattered this illusion of human control that society had so comfortably wrapped itself in.
So it really all comes down to this big question. How did a ship deemed unsinkable create a tragedy that shocked the world? As we've seen, the Titanic didn't sink because of one single isolated mistake. It was the catastrophic result of a perfect storm. We're talking human overconfidence, heavily overlooked ice warnings, fatal engineering limitations, and a wildly outdated regulatory system regarding lifeboats. The whole shebang. But this tragedy did permanently change the world. It led directly to the establishment of the International Ice Patrol, and it triggered sweeping new maritime safety laws, including, thankfully, the strict requirement that ships must carry enough lifeboats for every single person on board. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought to chew on. What other modern marvels do we place our unwavering faith in today? Because this story reminds us that human ambition will always, always be at the mercy of nature's unpredictable forces.